Welcome to RealmIQ Sessions, featuring conversations on AI with AI founders, AI leaders, and experts from around the globe, covering the intersection of media, technology, Hollywood, and marketing. Please give us a follow or subscribe. This is our host, Curt Doty.
Welcome, everybody. Let's get into it. We are well into our season 3, and I'm excited to introduce today's guest is Alex Serdiuk. He runs the Emmy Award-winning voice technology company Respeecher, an AI voice cloning technology based in Kyiv, Ukraine. He's coming from Kyiv today, Slava, Ukraine. He is using AI the right way, and I applaud his efforts. Welcome, Alex. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so I'd love to learn more about your background and how you got into AI and founded your company and all the cool things that you're doing. Please elaborate.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it now feels that the whole background is Respeecher because we've been doing that for 7 years as full-time story, and for 3-4 years before that as just an idea. Before that, myself and one of my co-founders, we were working together in data analytics domain. So we were analyzing data of banks and other financial institutions in order to improve their marketing, which is not something we were very much excited to do for a big chunk of our lives. So we were looking into different things, and at some point we tried this technology at the hackathon organized by Grammarly, one of Ukrainian unicorns here in Kyiv. And we won that hackathon with a very simple technology of voice conversion. So we basically made one voice sound like another. Then we started to talk to the industry. We were excited about the film industry, music industry, animation, video games. And those folks provided us with the feedback, which was very, very concise. If you guys can make it work in terms of quality, we would use it, because everything we see out there is not usable for us for high quality content. It just doesn't cut it. So we were focused on quality of the sound first, trading out usability, scalability, and ended up getting into Hollywood projects starting from 2019. And since then, we've been delivering quite a few projects a year as an agency, but now we transition to a platform for content makers and a marketplace for IP owners, for voice owners.
That's awesome. So when the gaming industry contacted you and said what wasn't working for them, what was that specifically and what problem did you solve?
Yeah, I mean, the gaming industry is, first of all, it's really hard to draw a very clear distinction line between feature film and a video game because the process is somewhat similar, and also characters, they travel from one to another. There is a lot of derivative characters in those works. But what's special about video games, they require a lot of voiceover, like a lot, meaning like 40 hours, 80 hours of voiceover. It's massive. And in order to do so, they need to get those voices in front of microphone for all this time, plus all the required overhead for recording. And additionally to that, they need them to be available to re-record, because when you create a feature, you do principal shooting and then you do ADR, right? After everything is done. But in the video game, it's like a constant ADR. So you need to change all those stuff throughout the process, which is a huge load. So what we do with the technology, we help with those voices to be available when a particular person is not available, but also we do character voices, because I mean, for voice actors, it could be really hard to get it in terms of the character voice. They could be doing this squeaky voice for like 40 minutes and then they have to rest all day long. With the technology, they can just use their normal voice to drive their own character voice. We do de-aging when voice owners aged, but they need to sound exactly like they sounded a while ago. And we do some voice recreation, voices from the past from games.
Yeah, well, I read your Mandalorian story with young Luke Skywalker. So that was cool. Tell me about that and how that worked, because that was kind of a top secret mission for a while and then came out and it was really cool.
Yeah, it was quite a project. I mean, it was in early days of Respeecher. We were engaged with Lucasfilm and Skywalker Sound people, and the task was to recreate Luke's original voice from 45 years ago, from a while ago. And it was recorded on tape. when Star Wars were not that big as it's now, right? So we had access to those tape recordings. We trained our models, which were way less sophisticated than those now. And it took us a while to make it, not just because of the technology limitations we faced back then, but also because of the way how Lucasfilm operates. Those are very, very picky sound engineers in a good way. I mean, they do thousands of takes. Then they run those thousands of takes through
Korean, right?
Yeah, they run it through like 12 models we created for them, and then they select, and then we go through rounds of feedback and stuff. So it took quite a bit of work. And actually, we did the same voice for the Book of Boba Fett using newer models. So it sounds a little bit better to our ears in the Book of Boba Fett. But it was amazing to spin it off. I mean, it was extremely complicated project. And back then we thought that we are dealing with the oldest data we could ever deal with. But just this year, we had to recreate voices from Vox cylinders, the very first recording device for Geo documentary called Endurance about Shackleton and his team.
Okay. All right. Since we're talking about the movie world, you were recently in a controversy around The Brutalist, which to me was a kind of a minor element, kind of under the, special effects category, which, films are always using special effects to like finish a film. And yet it bubbled up as a controversy, which I believe it was not. I've written about it. I've talked about it with friends on this podcast. And so just tell me how that happened and how that went. And I'm part Hungarian, so I appreciate the fact that you're, helping the Hungarian language kind of live in a new way through Adrian Brody.
Yeah, that was an amazing project, an amazing team we had to work with, and amazing voices we had to be working with. I don't support the word controversy because, I mean, it was just created through the Oscars race when people compete. So they use whatever they can to compete. And since it became visible that the voice synthesis technology was used to do accents, but there was not enough context from this original interview of the editor, many wrong stories appeared. Essentially, what we did, we engaged with the team, and Brady, the director, he wanted to make it perfect. Just a very legit request from a filmmaker. He wanted to make it perfect in terms of original sounding of Adrian Brody and Felicity Jones in Hungarian. And it was quite a bit of work as well. So they recorded a lot in Hungarian. Before that, they worked for months with accent coach. But as you know, Hungarian language is one of the hardest out there in the world. Yeah. And they had to fix some tiny things, like particular vowels or consonants in those words. And they used the technology to make it sound perfect, to do this very sophisticated post-production. So Hungarian speaker wouldn't hear any accent when they listen to it. Mm-hmm. And I adore their approach. I mean, that's the beauty of working with such creators.
Again, the perfection is filmmaking, the vision of a director, the passion of the actors to get it right, and then using technology, embracing technology to help them, even though they went through the effort with the training and voice coaching and dialect coaching. So to me, it was a non-issue, certainly. And you mentioned that it came up in the trades, as everyone's competing and they're trying to diss their competitors. Right. So I applaud you. And to me, that is just a great use of AI. I think we're still a ways off from an AI film competing with other films, but here are these tools. Respeecher is one that seasoned filmmakers, editors, producers, directors, special effects artists, they can use these tools to help them in production. And to me, what is wrong with that? And so I think they're starting to embrace it. And I think sometimes controversy bubbles up, this technology, and then people will be curious and dig into it. Have you found that after these controversies that attention spiked and maybe you got more requests to learn more from Hollywood and the film community?
Yeah, I would say so. So we had some spike in what we call traffic, but essentially we've been working with almost all Hollywood studios by then. So we've been talking to those people already, been engaged in some projects that are under development right now, or even on ideating stage. What's cool about that we had a lot of requests for perfecting languages and accents, which I think is very important for the industry, because when you make high quality content, it needs to be high quality in terms of the sound itself. And in many cases, you cannot make a person learn a language in a matter of like weeks or months. You cannot make a person to speak perfect accent of a particular language. And when you need several lines in the movie, you'd better use technology, because first, it's available, it's out there. Secondly, it serves the need of making it sound good. It was interesting in Mandalorian. So when it comes to our technology being used, we are always up for disclosing the fact of our technology to be used as early as possible in the process, and we encourage our clients to do so. But in some cases, their PR decision and creative decision is to keep it silent for some time. And the reason some of those do that is because we humans are very much biased. So if we knew that, say, Mark Hamill was de-aged using technology in Mandalorian, we would hear some things we would never hear without this knowledge. We would just imagine some things about the sound. And what Jon Favreau did, he just kept silent. We saw that no one ever reacted to the voice. No one ever thought that the voice was manipulated somehow. And then in the making of the Mandalorian, he went out and told, that's how we made it. We used Respeecher. We used it for training the models from 40 years old tapes. And that's exactly how the technology helped us accomplish this mission of bringing character back.
Yeah, that's a great story, behind the scenes story. And, working with Favreau, I'm sure it was fantastic. He's such a visionary. So I want to ask you two questions, if you could elaborate. One is the ethics and permissions, licensing, those types of things, and then how that relates to music and AI. And if you can talk a little bit about Vocal Roots, which I think is built on your platform, which is doing some amazing things. So can you elaborate on that for a while?
Yeah, for sure. In terms of ethics, I wouldn't distinct any areas one from another. I mean, ethics is the whole solid thing. It applies to feature, it applies to animation, it applies to music and video games in the same way. And our logic is to be very conservative in regards to ethics. When we founded the company, one of the goals we put in front of us, along with creating this amazing technology, is not letting anyone to use this technology for bad things, for fooling people to hear something someone never said, stuff like that. So we put very strict boundaries in terms of how the technology could be used. And one of the main limitations is you cannot use Respeecher services and Respeecher technology if permission from a voice owner is not in place. So permission is a very starting point, and actually the first question our team asks when we are in early stages of engagements with content makers. Permission is extremely important, but along with that, we've been very cautious about how technology is highlighted in the project, what actually is being told, what is the story. And also we cut off some of the use cases for the technology, even with the permission, when we feel not comfortable about two things. First, Respeecher being associated with those things. Secondly, synthetic voice technology in general being associated with those things. And those would be politics, proper advertisement, where misleading is happening, stuff like that. So we had always to dig deep into the project's essence, because in some cases we had permissions, but then we found out that the person who gave the permission is in jail and they're doing a new album and stuff. And album is okay. The content is okay, but then we have to go deeper and see what the person is in jail for. And when we see what person is in jail for, we feel very uncomfortable to be associated with that. So that's quite unusual structure of working in a startup and with a startup from the side of content makers. But that's one of the cornerstones at Respeecher. So first one is quality. We deliver the quality no one else does in the industry. Second one is trust. We are trusted not just by Disney, Sony, NBCU, Warners, you name them. We are also trusted by those individuals, by Mark Hamill, by Adrian Brody, by those directors. And this trust is essential component for this business to move on. The technology would be adopted, but adoption goes through the fear stage. And this fear stage is very much prolongated in time, but also it's quite intense because the main asset those talents have been building through their life is their likeness. And they are afraid of being detached from their likeness, losing control over their likeness. And this trust component is something that makes them comfortable to engage with the technology, to explore the technology, to start doing some cool and amazing things the technology would allow them to do. Vocal Roots AI is one of the engagements, and in particular, it's in the music industry. And the idea is to bring back some of the hip hop legends' voices with all permission, with all the trust components, with all due respect to the craft, to the talent, to the community, to the listeners. We start with some first voices. There is a pipeline of the voices we've been working with this year, and it sounds exciting because, it's somewhat historical related projects, which are quite important, in my opinion, for humanity in general. We should pay more attention to our history.
Yeah. So you worked with Frank Nitti on Vocal Roots, and he's a legend in West Coast rap. Snoop Dogg mentored Badass, and that's one of the, deceased rappers whose voice you resurrected. So did Frank come to you with an idea after he researched what would be the best platform, and was, that idea of trust a factor in him deciding to go with Respeecher?
Yeah, I think so. It's been a while ago since we first engaged, maybe even 2 years. I don't recall. So it took a while for us to get to know each other, to see what's under the hood of each other, to start doing some early tests and see how this engagement could go. But essentially, there are two challenges. First, for us and for Frank, to ensure that it's all ethical and respectful. Secondly, is to ensure that it's deliverable in terms of the quality. So we want this music, high quality music, so you wouldn't even tell that it's synthesized. That's the goal of high quality synthetic voice technology, to be undistinguishable from just recording. Music is a little bit harder than doing just speech, because those vowels are different. You have long vowels. Classical models like synthetic speech models are not doing amazing job on music. But what's cool about Respeecher, we started doing some music stuff back in 2021, 2020, a while ago. And given that we were exposed to tasks of covering quite wide emotional range from Hollywood clients, from video games, meaning having screaming, whispering, crying, some singing out there. We've been polishing our models towards performing really well in singing mode, and rapping mode is something that we do pretty well. You might take a listen to one piece we did with Ella Black back in 2022 when he was making his tribute to Avicii, his close friend who passed away some time before that. And what Ella wanted to do, he wanted to recreate a song, Wake Me Up. They wrote together, they recorded together in different languages to make it multilingual. So we created the model for Ella's voice, and we made 5 versions in different language of this song. And then it was all joined with visual Metaphysic, one of the famous providers of visual deepfake. They made Ella Black move the lips in the exact way how he should be moving those lips for the foreign songs he's been singing, foreign versions of the songs.
Cool. Yeah. So you speak about localization, the fact that musicians could now use this technology to go into other countries in the native language of that country and further sell and promote their music to new audiences is kind of mind-blowing in terms of market expansion.
And along with that, they can engage with the audience in a different way, right? They can do marketing in their own voice, in the local language. They can invite people in a particular place where the concert is happening on a local radio station in a local language. We start having those projects. But along with that, we are also creating some new experiences when you can basically communicate with a virtual musician. So there is a model of real-time text-to-speech. There is an LLM behind it, and you can have a conversation with a musician in right at spot. So it feels like a human conversation like we are having with you right now.
Let's take a break. Vizsla is a great AI tool. I use it every day. It is the faster, easier, and better way to record your screens and make content. Get a discount by entering Curt15. Go to vizsla.us or scan the QR code. Strikingly is the most loved website and e-commerce builder by entrepreneurs. It is easy to use, and they have launched 12 plus million websites and online stores and counting. Go to strikingly.com or scan the QR code. Yeah, and that's really cool. I think these are great applications because, music and audio, to me, it's kind of the low-hanging fruit technology-wise, just because it's an MP3 at the end of the day, kind of a lo-fi file, but then, syncing it with the image likeness, that's the kind of the next level of technology, and lip syncing has always been an issue because it just was never right, right? It's like, well, it's not synced. What's going on? And so it seems like you've kind of conquered those challenges and expanded the market. And, I'm kind of against, or not really an advocate for robotics and how robots are going to take over, certainly musicians and stuff. I've never seen a robot play Rachmaninoff. And when they do, then I'll be impressed. But until then, forget it. So there's that performance aspect, but then there's the interaction with video, with hearing and seeing, and not necessarily in a live performance of instruments, let's say. I think you're seeming to thrive in that category, which I think is great, because why not? Push this technology into a practical use case where people can believe they're interacting with these artists in their own native language. I think that's really awesome. So tell me a little bit more about some of the more recent challenges, technology-wise, ethics-wise, industry-wise. I know you've limited some of the business silos so that you can thrive and focus. And I think any startup needs to focus. So I applaud you on that. But what are your newer challenges?
Yeah, I mean, the technology itself is always a challenge because we constantly work on being ahead of this quality race, right? So we work on authenticity of the sound. We work on naturalness of the sound. We work on speaker identity. We work on the speed of those models. We work on the data requirements. So the models would require as less data as possible. We want work on the speed of conversion itself, making it real time and even faster than real time. So those are like constant research and development challenges that the team faces. And it's not an easy work. I mean, it's like the work where you have like tons of hypotheses and you have to range them in terms of what's likely, what's not. And then you try different stuff. You try to use your creativity and imagination to apply some learnings from other domain to make it work. And then like 1 of 100 of your ideas is actually working out. And then you have to embed that into the product. So like 95% of what R&D is doing is going to the trash bin just because they're testing those hypotheses. And I think it's a challenge by itself to do that constantly, to do that for years. We also see that there is huge spike in terms of attention to synthetic voice technology, and it's somewhat driven by what we call unethical approach, when you just let people create whatever voices they want, reproduce whatever voices they want. And that's bad. That's something we avoided from the very beginning, but it gives some virality to those providers and to those technologies. And in some cases, it creates mess in the market, because market needs to navigate again and again through those very logical and very simple to us ethical challenges, whether it's right or not. Because, they try to draw this gray area and distribute the responsibility for misuse that's happening. The industry itself, it's been somewhat slow to adopt those technologies because it's somewhat fear-driven, right? It takes time for the industry to navigate. And our work here is to keep showcasing those amazing uses of the technology in order to help industry navigate, because the technology is neutral itself, and usage of the technology is being defined by creators and by the audience, which actually accepts the technology derivatives. But it's been slow in terms of the startup phase. It took years for the industry to get to the point where it's now, when it starts to utilize technology on different stages of production, pre-prod and prod and post, in amusement parks, in contact centers, in marketing, in trailers, in music, and interactive video games experience. It took quite a bit of time. And also it took quite a bit of time for talents to navigate the point where they are, and they're still navigating. So patience is one of the challenges we also face at Respeecher, because we have to be persistent and very patient, with all due respect to this industry.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that the technology is kind of neutral, but it's the creative people who use that technology to take it to new levels and build new use cases. I think that is what elevates the technology and the perception. And you're using that as kind of a sales tool, really, right? Because you're constantly looking for new use cases, using your creative minds to imagine, right, what's possible. And I think that I applaud that effort, because I think with any new technology, it's always going to be the creative community that takes it to the next level. Exactly. Otherwise, just the technology, and it won't advance. It'll reach a peak at some point, right? But then creatives will come along and say, well, no, I could use it for this and do this that's never been done before. And that's thinking out of the box, right? And that's thinking beyond the kind of engineer mentality of, well, we're just building this technology to clone a voice. That's it. That's all we have to do. It's like, well, not really, because there's all these other complexities around the use cases, right? So I applaud your efforts in being that creative spark. I call it creative-centered AI. And I think that's, I am a designer, so I come from the design background. And, human-centered design is certainly a driving force in how we connect with consumers. And I think creative-centered AI is what will elevate the technology to reach new levels and continually, blow people's minds with what's going on. And I appreciate certainly the ethical lens with which you're doing everything, and that you do your due diligence on your clients that approach you. And it's so refreshing to have a company, a startup, a successful startup succeed, with that lens. So I applaud your efforts.
Thank you so much. But it's still somewhat unusual for the tech industry, for the startup industry. But that comes from the essence of Hollywood, the essence of high-end content creators, because there are a lot of unusual for the technology things in the core of content creation, like respect, like craft, like looking into ways how a tech would enhance human in some of the things that are essential to humans, like acting, performing, and looking into ways how AI can enhance craft itself, the human craft, the creativity. It's very interesting domain, and it's very cool to be deep into that and observing how how the tech changes and influences the approach we used to take to filmmaking, to video game making, as well as how it being navigated by sane humans in order to use it in a very legit and proper way.
Yeah, I think this technology empowers people, empowers creatives, and empowers process as people create their own workflows within whatever industry they're in. I think I know you mentioned advertising as being something maybe you're staying away from, but I think how AI and video may not, I think AI films are a little further out, but AI and advertising and cutting commercials and creating fantastic and titillating imagery that's kind of non sequitur. I think Madison Avenue, as we call it in the States here, the advertising industry, I think AI is going to really kind of kick some butt and shake things up, if not already.
I
What are your
wouldn't say
thoughts
that we
about
are,
advertising, and applications there?
yeah, I wouldn't say that we are like staying away from advertisement. It's a legit industry that actually requires innovation because a lot of ads we see are not relevant. They're not making sense. They're poor quality. And this industry would still exist as long as things are being sold out there, right? But our approach to advertising that we have to be sure that there is no misleading using synthetic likeness. So we had rejected some cases where we had permission and there was famous voice, but they wanted to advertise some medical products that are not FDA approved. And this is a dark zone for us. We are not comfortable there. So we are cautious with such cases when it comes to misleading using synthetic voice technology. But it doesn't. I don't say that misleading does not happen in advertising. So we just to be sure that our tech and synthetic voice tech is not being used there. So we are very cautious with the brand of synthetic voice in general.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned synthetic, and synthetic media is really a brand new category. And, ironically, synthetic data is another aspect of that, maybe negative because it's kind of AI eating itself. But I'm fascinated with synthetic media. I think it's a viable business as long as you do it ethically like you're doing. But synthetic media as a category, it's a new term. I don't hear a lot of people talking about or mentioning it as a category, but I believe it is a category and a nice way to counter, the deepfake technology, which is a negative, right? And associated with, ripping off. But synthetic media, I'm a brander, so words are important to me. And synthetic media as a brand, as a descriptor of what's going on, I think is accurate. And so how do you feel about that? And is that helping you in guiding potential clients and eliminating some of the fear with the use of that term?
First of all, I've been always against the term of deepfake to be used just because it has so much negative connotation itself. It's not fair to use the word deepfake for many amazing technologies out there, but unfortunately it became somewhat descriptive word in the business. So I'm a fan of synthetic voice, synthetic visuals, wording. In terms of the category itself, it's actually a challenge because nothing similar ever existed, in my opinion. And that's the problem, because when you do something cool in technology, you can always find a reference. You can say it's Uber of something, it's Spotify of something, it's YouTube of something, it's Google of something. But it's not the case for synthetic likeness, because the whole concept of likeness is being changed. Humans are being removed in terms of the boundaries they have. Those boundaries in humans are being removed of them knowing languages they don't know, being able to perform in the way they are not able to perform, being in many places at the same time, being always with the voice with every version of the voice they had. through their lifespan, being able just to perform in the voice of another person. That's completely new concept when you're detaching something very humanish in nature from a human body itself. And I would say that this category is imposing challenges, because when you need to explain that to investors, when you need to explain that in simple words to clients, it could be uneasy. But the thing is, when you start digging deeper, you see that several domains are being very much influenced by the technology. The domain of copyright, original material, data, the domain of likeness itself and the likeness rights, the domain of craft and creativity, the domain of acting. So all those things have to be put together when you decide on the good applications of the technology and how exactly to embed technology in the workflows, or even create some new workflows based on the technology. And that's one of the reasons why those strikes were so harsh over the last years, right? Because it's uneasy to navigate.
Well, yeah, it's uneasy to navigate because there isn't that simple metaphor. But that is also an indicator, you are in pioneering mode and you've reached what I call your POI, your point of innovation. And you as a technology
What's point
leader,
of innovation?
Point of innovation is when you're at a point where you're in a category that is not easily defined, you're ruffling some feathers, and you're pushing the boundaries in some aspect. And as an innovator and as a tech leader, you need to thrive in that space, knowing you're in that space, and then bring people along with you. Many people in technology, many kind of startup founders, they don't have a POI in their deck or their product offering, or they don't know that they're in it or out of it, or know what they need to do to achieve it. So it's very important that, any new technology advance creates discomfort. And so as an innovator, you have to embrace that, because you're in the right space, because you want to do something new, right? You want to challenge the norm. And so these are terms that I've used and coined to help founders, kind of realize their vision, and that how to speak to potential investors, because there isn't a common language sometimes when presenting an offer. And so you have to provide context in which people can absorb it and open their minds to the possibilities. So these are just little techniques and terms I use. And I applaud those people who are in that space and have achieved that. And I point, it's like, look at these guys, they did it. No one was doing it, and it took years. It wasn't, an overnight success. And so what are some of your upcoming projects you can talk about? And I know sometimes there's NDAs, the place where you can't, but maybe speak broadly, maybe, or categories you can speak to.
Yeah, I mean, we cannot talk about the projects until the production is over, but in most of the cases until the release itself. We have quite a bit of work, some cool work in the feature space. We do some very cool music work right now. We do quite a bit of work in TV space. We do platform engagement with studios when they start to use us for pre-production use cases, for casting different voice characteristics in production to enhance their creative process. We start putting technology in hospitality use cases when you can actually engage with real-time synthetic voice as a visitor. Those are really cool cases. We keep marrying our technology with visual providers. So we are doing something cool with holograms right now, with 3D characters, 3D avatars. It's interesting to get those different parts of the same technology to be merged together and provide a cool experience. Most of the work is in high-end space, but what we recently released is a new piece of technology called real-time text-to-speech. It's not new to the market, but it's new for Respeecher in terms of releasing it on a Respeecher level of quality. We've been very picky about our releases because we are we are so quality oriented and we have not been releasing real-time technology or real-time text-to-speech technology for quite a while until we are satisfied. But now we are exactly at the moment where we are satisfied, and it could be massively integrated into products that require the voice component, that require voice agents, AI agents to speak, that require some character voices to be part of the technology. And it's very important time because right now we are at the edge of the change that happened in the technology. Because a couple of years ago, our computer phone was just a tool, just an instrument. Now it's a whole partner. All has changed. We communicate with our computer, our phone in a different way. And what we see there that when we communicate with something that is human-like partner, the most comfortable channel for us to do that is verbal channel of communication. That's how humans communicate, actually. And we are yet to see voice-first interfaces. Those never happened in the industry because those voice-first interfaces were created for people with vision disabilities, not for general audience. And those are very exciting times, and we are happy to support this technology change in general with some new pieces of technology on Respeecher level of quality built by a trusted company in the space.
Yeah, the whole idea of user interface design and how do you interact with these technologies and how do you manipulate a voice with a tool. There's been some feeble attempts, a lot of frustration. And so that's a great problem to solve, certainly in the customer relations management space, right? Where you're talking with an evolved chatbot, which is agentic AI at this point. And that's a whole new category. So that's exciting. I think it's an exciting evolution. And again, kudos to you for recognizing this interface that is in between the outcomes that you need. And that needs to be consumerized, however you want to state that. But that's awesome. So listen, we're getting to the end of our podcast, and you want to give a shout out to where people can reach you and your platform's URL and stuff?
Yeah, for sure. We are at www.respeecher.com. You can see us on IMDb, but the best way to engage with our work is to go to cinema to see some of those amazing movies we are part of.
Awesome. Listen, thanks, Alex. And thanks to all of you for tuning in, and catch more of our RealmIQ sessions on your favorite podcast platforms. Please follow and smash that subscribe button. You can also follow us on TikTok, LinkedIn, and Blue Sky. Signing off. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I want to thank our sponsors, Vizsla and Strikingly. If you want to sponsor this podcast, click the link below.
RealmIQ. Transform your business with AI-driven innovation.
Subscribe to our Media Slam newsletter and learn more about the intersection of design, content, and technology. CurtDoty.co. Branding, marketing, and product development.